example of
I see what you
touting
mean.
about something.
Yeah, I can.
Hi everybody, we are live on the KickX webinar.
Okay.
It's recorded, so just for everyone. We're gonna wait for people to join. Yeah. There's no one here yet. I'm sure they're coming soon. Yeah, we have some people here in the room with us.
There's no one here yet virtually, though. We have
Virtually.
people in the room.
Yeah. Just give them a second to join.
You have the same power.
Everyone's here.
You use the same PowerPoint.
Oh.
How we actually
You use the same PowerPoint.
Yeah, I
guess.
When I was in high school, I started. Well, I ended up teaching singing lessons. Okay. I realized that I enjoyed teaching. We had grade 13 when I was in Ontario, and that year decided as a fundraiser to basically get people to allow us to teach for a day. So I took my physics teacher's place and physics for a day.
We have 2 viewers here also.
So I really enjoyed that. Essentially, since high school, my goal was to like teach some sort of passion. Yeah, I was kind of like maybe going towards
Hello.
teaching physics, but decided that was.
Maybe put on your chat so you can see if people are.
So what's your master's? What's your master's?
Oh, no, like it was either go on to teaching or go more the academic route and also be a professor. But I knew I wanted teaching, so it's a good of a thing. Yeah, but my problem is that I'm interested in something. It's all over the place. Yeah. So like I got bored.
Yeah. We'll send the recording.
Like,
I think we'll probably do it.
Oh, you're not? Okay. I took higher level.
Okay, well, why don't we get fired up?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's recorded anyway, so.
We don't actually teach, we don't offer physics.
Just
It's like an
I'll give that to you. Can I-
just want to see if you can see my screen.
It's tough.
Present to everyone.
Oh, yeah, it's awesome. It is pretty
Looks like it's on, right? You don't want to.
I just want to do screen sharing actually.
I teach in a very small school.
The green button at the top.
The biology and chemistry of all this by choice. Never had to take the IBA. Never had to take the yeah.
Great. I think we're ready to go.
Yes.
Half an hour of time to practice.
Exactly. Okay, that's great. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us. My name is Keith. For those I've had the pleasure of meeting before. And for those who don't know me, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Spring. Spring is a purpose-driven activator. And so the way that we like to describe ourselves is an organization that loves to support high growth potential, for-profit, impact-based organizations. And so simply put, we love to look for the next Whole Foods, Tom's Shoes, Kickstarter, Etsy. Within the balance of that, we call ourselves an activator because we provide a range of tools and resources to entrepreneurs to help them grow and thrive. Our sweet spot is helping people basically between writing their idea on a napkin and say about $2 million in revenue. And the Kick program is a program that we started to deliver to the marketplace last year for those people who are generally speaking at the earliest stages. So you have an idea, but where do you want to take this idea? Have you validated the idea? Is it an exciting idea? Is it a good idea? Will somebody pay for you to do it? And through that process, you also get to find out, do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you have the right team? And And so as a result, we call it 6 weeks to clarity. And so what we were hoping to do today was talk a little bit about Kick and KickX. And so what we'll do is we'll describe the Kick program, but leading up to that, we'll actually spend a little bit of time just talking about some of the trends that are happening in the marketplace right now, and use that hopefully as a catalyst for conversation as well. So, so yeah, why don't we get started? Okay. So for what's happening in the marketplace today, and I'm just going to let this thing catch up to me here in a second. There we go. There's a number of really, I think, exciting trends that are happening globally. The first one is the rise of the village economy. The village economy is exciting for a couple of reasons. One is it really increases the number of opportunities for people to access entrepreneurial support in the city. As an entrepreneur, it's a huge opportunity. You know, it's changing the way that people are purchasing product. It's changing the way that people are living fundamentally, where they live, the size of the place that they live, what they need as a result, what types of services and access to products are required. And so it's a very exciting time, especially in North America, where this trend is probably the most pronounced right now. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us as entrepreneurs to look at a trend like this and think about some of the implications. And we're going to chat through some examples here in a minute. Rise of millennials, I think, is a given. With millennials, 75% of the global workforce in the next 10 years, millennials are actually already giving birth to 75% of the babies in North America. So fundamentally, within the next 5 to 7 years, millennials represent the economic force in our world. And as a result, it also means that millennials will also represent one of the driving forces in entrepreneurship and innovation. But it's important to note that as entrepreneurs, millennials act and think and engage the world in a very different way than prior generations. And authenticity, passion, and meaning are driving motivators. One of the ways that I like to describe this is that, at least in the North American context, millennials are the choice generation. And so what that means is people who are under the age of 32-ish, 34, for the first time in the history of North America at the very least, as a generation grew up not lacking anything, you know, in terms of needing to worry about like where income was going to come from. You know, do I have a roof over my head? Do I have, you know, 3 square meals? Do I have access to universal education? Do I have access to entrepreneurial opportunities? Do I have free access to capital? These are all new and certainly more pronounced in the millennial generation. And so what that means is millennials generally aren't doing anything because they quote unquote have to. They're doing it because they choose to. And that is one of the most empowering forces, I think, that the world has ever seen. Some of the manifestations of this would be things like the sharing economy, the gig economy, B corporations, which are corporations that go through a process to specifically designate that they are in the world to both make money, but also make a positive change in the world. So locally, Hootsuite just announced that they're going through the process of becoming a B Corp, as an example. You know, maker spaces, hacker spaces, all of these things are extensions of the rise of millennials, which is an amazing part of what we're seeing. This next trend, I think, is incredible too. The third industrial revolution, amazing stat, right? Until 2005, technology accounted for less than 3% of global GDP. And now it's, you know, the driving force between all of, you know, basically all of the IPOs of note that are happening now, all of the capital raising that's happening, all of the new job creation that's happening. Heard the staggering statistic the other day from a friend of mine who's a senior product person at Google, and they're hiring more than 400 people a week at Google. They have more than 100,000 people now. And so that's just another sign of what's happening in the space. And so this is going to transform every aspect of what we do. You know, we were talking the other day about wearable devices within the team, and everything from access to information, access to data, questions around privacy, when are we on, when are we off. So some amazing implications that exist. You know, in the healthcare space, we know a company that is trying to tackle high-risk pregnancies through wearable devices and apps. We know another company that's trying to tackle, for example, incontinence in elderly people using wearable devices and trying to solve what is going to be a growing challenge as baby boomers retire and become the largest percentage of the population, but at that age where things start to break down, right? So really some fascinating and amazing trends that I think help to frame this time as being, I think, the most exciting time to be an entrepreneur ever. You know, how consumers buy is changing dramatically. You know, we've seen some really fascinating things happen in the last little while in things like traditional media, the blending of traditional media with retail, with e-commerce, changing the way that people buy, offline malls dying. Like, how many people have seen those photos, you know, on the web, you know, all those abandoned malls? It's actually this whole crazy trend that's happening. And so it's changing the way people not only buy, but what they consume and where they consume it. So the rise of the 100-mile diet in a very bricks and mortar sense is a good example of this. And so it's these are all trends that I think put us in a place where we see people doing some really interesting things out there. So Tom's Shoes would be a good example of that, like to come up with an idea where, you know, buy a pair of shoes and they give a pair of shoes away, and the opportunities and the challenges that that also represents is quite staggering, right? Great. So the interesting part of this process is, you know, people aren't coming up with ideas in a vacuum, right? You come up with great ideas. Anybody can have an idea. You come up with a great idea by listening to the customer. And so the question is how do you do that well? So some of the outcomes of this would be a product like Zoa. So Zoa is a product that actually was conceived in Vancouver. For those true Canadians, it was actually conceived in Port Coquitlam. And it launched here in Vancouver through the next big thing, which is through Hootsuite. And they were accepted in and just graduated from a wearable tech accelerator in Silicon Valley. And this blending of this very bricks and mortar device that originally was kind of very large and kept shrinking it down, and now you can clip it onto your backpack or your belt or wherever you want to put it. And you can even stick it on the wall in your house, and it helps you to track the environmental quality around you. Everything from, allergens in the air to UV rays, and whether or not you put on sunscreen, how much pollution is in the air. So it's quite a dramatic technology, but it's this blend of software and hardware, all in this sort of blended environment. And it's an interesting play because they've actually gained a ton of interest from people who sell into retail. So everything from cosmetics companies, so what makeup to wear depending on what the conditions are outside, and whether or not to wear makeup at all, unless it reacts with something in your environment, through to sporting goods companies, through to people like Google who are just trying to collect a whole bunch of data about what's going on out there, right? Blending food and tech. So Good Eggs, which is represented on this slide, is a fascinating company that is the first company to seemingly really sort out this e-commerce curation and delivery of perishable food, right? And so, but many of us know that on the other end of the spectrum, we have people like Amazon who are also trying to sort this out. And who knows, maybe they'll even deliver grocery by drones, which is what they're kind of testing out, right? The other one is just simply responding to trends and being aware of what's happening around you. So mood lights is just such a great contrast to everything else. because first of all, it's not super high tech. But what they recognized is that, this whole concept of colors and how they affect your mood, and they saw this starting to manifest itself in everything from wall colors in homes and work to what people would wear in terms of colors, and people's understanding of color and shade and contrast and brightness affecting mood. And so they actually brought that into the world of lighting, and have been hugely successful as a result. And it's had everything from general retail application through to institutional applications in hospitals and in mental institutions and everything in between. So quite a very different type, but equally relevant type of innovation. And then the move to e-commerce and crowdfunding. So I love to talk about Shipwire and ShipStation. Sometimes innovation then breeds a whole new level of innovation to support that first one, right? So with crowdfunding, when the Kickstarters and the Indiegogos of the world first started, on average, 90% of the successful campaigns never shipped a product. And part of it was they didn't have a freaking clue of how to do it. And so what happened is that companies like Shipwire and ShipStation actually came to be expressly to solve that problem for the e-com and crowdfunding, in particular generation. So you're selling all this stuff online, how the heck do you fulfill it? And so ShipStation and Shipwire, you can see this warehouse. So the one company has created an entire network of warehouses specifically designed to ship crowdfunded product. And so in doing so, they've actually completely redefined what it means to actually run a fulfillment warehouse, and also what it means to do the picking and packing. It also changes the way that people think about packaging and the implications on our planet, right? So how much packaging are you generating? Are you using packaging that's recyclable, compostable, et cetera? So it's really brought those conversations to the forefront, which I think is incredible. And then I always love talking about this guy. So when you listen to the customer, it actually helps you to know when your idea is not great. And then it also helps you to respond to that. So the picture is Stuart Butterfield. And so Stuart Butterfield was with a company that was creating a massive multiplayer online game. How many people know this story, Stuart Butterfield? Okay, so at least in the room, we have one person who knows it. I think Jennifer's heard it. But Stuart was a part of a team building a massive multiplayer online game in 2004. The idea was not going anywhere, but as a part of it, they had built a feature which was a photo sharing feature. They decided to put it out in the marketplace just to get feedback on the feature, knowing that people didn't like the original idea. They put that feature out there. They called it Flickr. They got 5 million users in 9 months. And then they sold the company in 2005 to Yahoo at the time, 35 million in cash. And so interestingly enough, a few years later, Stuart is like, okay, now's the time for that game. So then he takes another run at it. And again, splat, it doesn't go anywhere. Now, because it was Stuart and he had done Flickr, he had raised $18 million to do this game. So when they run out of cash and they're getting close to the end, they say, hey guys, game's not gonna work. They go to their investors and they say that, but they said, we've got this thing that we built for team communication and collaboration. And so we think we should test that in the market. And so the investors were like, sure, let's take a run at it. So they called some companies in Vancouver, even though most of the team is based in San Fran, and they said, hey, can you try this thing out? So some companies tried it and everybody's like, this thing's amazing. So then they called it Slack and they released it in the marketplace. And within 2 years, he's raised about $250 million and it's currently valued at $3 billion in less than 2 years. So it's a great example of not, Stuart clearly is not picking the right idea the first time every time, clearly not. But where he's really brilliant is in listening to the customer and then finding the innovation and the problem to solve through that process, right? So that's the fun part. So that brings us to Kick, which is really a 6-week program designed to really help you as an entrepreneur to find clarity, either in your existing idea or in an evolution of your idea or in a completely new one. And so we here are talking about KickX, which is the virtual delivery of Kick. And the great thing for us, at least from my perspective, is, you know, virtual technology, aside from, you know, our headaches in getting this one started. And so now that it's out of the way, we'll, you know, all the future sessions will be great. But the important part is that we can take everything from Kick and bring it into an online setting. So Kick is designed to tool you up to be a great entrepreneur. It is not designed to make your idea work, right? Because if we focus on making you a great entrepreneur, then we make objective the decision as to whether or not the idea is good and whether or not the marketplace wants it. So we've had many instances in Kick where people have an idea and it's validated and it's a great idea and they run with it. And in other cases, the original idea, not spectacular. Make some changes, also known as pivoting, find the right idea, then run with it. And then we've had a few cases where, you know what, it's just not a good idea, and that's okay, right? Because you get the tools to be a great entrepreneur. When you get that next idea, then you're ready. It's absolutely inclusive. So nonprofit, co-op, for-profit, bricks and mortar, patents pending, high tech. Andy was in a cohort where we had a cycling nonprofit and we had a Bitcoin company, right? And we had a mobile app and we had some other stuff. And so it's that inclusiveness that creates a richness of the experience, right? Where you hear different perspectives and you don't run into the risk of groupthink, where like either you have a bunch of tech guys who are all thinking the same thing or a bunch of nonprofits who are all thinking the same thing. Like it really allows people to challenge assumptions and listen to what the customer is saying as opposed to hearing what you want to hear. It's very tool oriented. We'll chat through those in a minute. And it's also an incredibly fast way to add to your network. First and foremost with the peers that are in the group. Finding a peer network of fellow entrepreneurs is so critical because being a founder is the loneliest job, right? There's only one person at the pointy end of the stick. And so you need those extra people kicking around, right? Who you can rely on, who you can do a cathartic dump with, who you can share contacts and introductions with, etc. And of course, we bring mentors to the table. So Kick was launched by Fledge, which is a purpose-based accelerator in Seattle. It's a Y Combinator clone specifically for impact-based businesses. It's considered to be one of the best accelerators in the world. In their last cohort, which just launched, they had 170 applications from around the world, and they accepted 7 companies, and they are from 6 different countries. So it's an incredible organization. Looney knows what he's doing. Michael Looney Lives, serial entrepreneur and an instructor. And so the foundation of the program was great, and that gave us the confidence here at Spring to try it out. And so we at Spring now are not only the organization that's delivering Kick in Vancouver, but we are also the master licensee for all of Canada. And we are the first of the Kick organizations globally to do a virtual Kick. So we're actually leading the charge on a global basis for KickX. It's now in 23 cities around the world. And so the important part is, first, this is battle-tested curriculum, right? Hundreds of entrepreneurs have gone through this. It's been iterated, it's evolved as a result. In addition, it does open the door for you to connect with entrepreneurs from around the world. There have been some entrepreneurs that I will tell you absolutely have taken advantage of that, and others who don't. It's your choice. But what I will tell you is the choice is large, which is great. So it is a 6-week curriculum-based program. You get over 40 hours of virtual in-class. So this is live facilitation, no different than what we're doing right now. Lots of opportunities for dynamic Q&A. There's about 3 to 10 hours a week of homework. It's worth noting there's over 40 videos that come with the book. Yeah, it's actually out of date. So 25 videos, but it's about 40 now, and a worksheet. So there's lots of great core materials. We absolutely pull from the global best practices, things like Lean Startup and Business Model Canvas, but really extend well beyond that as well, and stitch them together in a flow that I think is very logical for an entrepreneur who's trying to validate an idea. Also access to 15+ mentors through the course of the program. And these mentors are a combination of entrepreneurs who've been there and done that, people who are subject matter experts, and then also people who provide leadership in other ways. So for example, some of the faces on here, Mike Rollins from Junction Strategy. It's a global PR and communications consultancy, has worked with some of the global Fortune 100 companies, as well as some incredible nonprofits, like doing all the communications effort for Doctors Without Borders, for example. Incredible organization. Paulina Cameron, who works with Futurepreneur, which is an incredible source of funding, mentorship, marketing support for young entrepreneurs in Canada. And people who have run nonprofits, for-profit, bricks and mortar, patents pending high tech, people who have launched and grown companies, people who have had their companies acquired, and people who have had their companies acquired multiple times. So we've actually can bring a rich heritage of people to the room. Some of those people would definitely be candidates to be advisors for your firm, mentors for you as individuals, potential investors in certain cases, or business partners, depending on the context, right? It's important to note as well that we bring our own partners to the table. Some of these are going to be directly relevant to your business, some may not, but the goal for us as Spring is to bring a rich set of partnerships to the table. So for example, for Canadian businesses, Futurepreneur, which again, mentorship, marketing support, brand support, funding support, for those people in the Lower Mainland, Van City, and through Van City, some of the other credit union partnerships. And it's worth noting that we are a community partner of both, so we can create accelerated access to capital through those partners for graduating companies. We have partnerships with great people like Indiegogo and Unbounce, and several other technology partners, so free and deeply discounted software and services, Granted Consulting, which is a grant writing firm to help you get access to free sources of capital like grants as well as loans. And then in Canada, the National Research Council and the IRAP program. And so this is particular to software companies and how you can accelerate the development of your product through grant money through the federal government. So let's give a bit of context there. We also have thousands of dollars in free perks, not exaggerating at all. If you took full advantage, it's literally in the tens of thousands of dollars. Now we know that not everything is applicable to everybody. However, there are definitely some pieces that fit. Eventbrite fits a lot of people. Rackspace, which is web hosting of your apps or your websites. Many of these things are applicable to many organizations, and so there is a great opportunity for you to take advantage of those tools and resources once you validate your idea. So the details, we have a couple of dates coming up. One is May 19th, and the other one is June 16th. The program fee is $495. Which we think is quite reasonable. It's more than $1,000 if you want to take Kick in person, and so we think it's a very fair fee for all of the benefits that you're getting through the Kick program. We do have some scholarship opportunities available, so it's always good to ask about those. And just to give you a bit of a sense, we have several companies that have come out of the Kick program so far. These happen to be some organizations that have come out of the Vancouver Kick. So for example, Amoda Tea came out of Kick One. It's a e-commerce platform for curated tea selection, and they've been growing very well since their official launch in October. Netcoins, which is a Bitcoin company, which has already seen traction around North America, which is amazing. Based Relocation, Lori came in, validated her idea. She found her tech co-founder. They actually started generating revenue even before they launched their product. She won an event in Vancouver called Girls Raising. She will now spend next week in New York City with a series of pitch events and meetings curated based on that event win. My Green Space, which came out of the most recent cohort, which is a combination of a mobile app as well as a service for brown thumbs like myself to actually grow veggies in an urban environment. And so an amazing product. again, already generating revenue pre-launch of their app. And then the last one that I want to mention is MuseFind. And MuseFind had a great journey in spring, came in with a certain idea with a certain name, came out with a slightly different idea with a slightly different name. And I don't want to steal all her thunder, so Jennifer is actually here. So what I'll do is I'll get Jennifer to walk on over, and then she'll introduce herself to the virtual audience as well as those in the room, and maybe just tell your story quickly. I'll swap seats. Okay. Come on in, Jen.
Hello, virtual friends. So my name is Jennifer, and I was part of Kick cohort two. Yeah.
Two.
So it's Kick 2. So we came in actually as an e-commerce company, and we were pivoting. We weren't sure what to do. So Keith was said take Kick, and I'm like, no, I don't want to take Kick. I think it was like the last night before Kick started. I said, you know what, I'll go for the first day and I'll see what happens. So I ended up going, and it was the most life-changing event in my entrepreneurial journey so far. Keith mentioned talking to customers, which is so important, and you have to listen to what they're saying, not listen for what, like you said, what you want to hear them say. So we came with theory. It didn't work, so we went back with another theory and started talking to customers. I literally spent 2 weeks talking to like over 100 people that I didn't know. I cold called these people. Under the guidance of Keith and the mentors, it was super valuable. So what came out of that was MuseFind, and essentially it's a collaboration marketplace for e-commerce brands and influencers. And we actually started selling the product before we built it. And due to that, we grew a network of influencers from like 70 to over 170,000. And we were recently accepted into one of the top accelerators in New York. So out of 1,000 companies that applied, we were one of 10 that were selected, and we're the first Canadian company ever to be accepted in the cohort, which is super cool. So I'm really excited to be representing Vancouver and Spring. And we're going out there in 29 days. So that's our journey. And we're gonna go as far as we can with this and continue to take on a lot of the values that we got out of Kick.
That's great, thank you. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually stop sharing now this presentation as we're at the end. So let's see if I can do this. Great. So what I want to do now is open the floor to questions and commentary. And so it's important to note for those who are virtual that Jennifer is still in the room as a Kick graduate. We also have Andy Chu from Sprout, which is now called Givingly, also in a pivot, Givingly app. Okay, I will tell you that Andy is suffering from a cold, so he might sign language his answers if you have any questions. So what I want to do is just open it up to you guys, both here in the room as well as online, to just chat through any questions that you might have, either about Kick, the curriculum, the agenda, who shows up, logistics, details, or if you have a more question a little bit more broadly about Spring, be happy to answer that as well. So if anybody online wants to ask any questions, then what we can do is we can test that. So we'll keep an eye on that, and then obviously open it up to you guys. So maybe I'll start with the guys in the room. The real people.
Question?
Yes.
So I'm Yannick. I just want to know, so what's the timeline look like for this Kick?
So the timeline for this Kick program, it starts on May 19th or on June 6th. Thank you. Tuesday and Thursday evenings. We run it from 6 to 9 p.m. What we do is a week before you start the program, you get all of the online access. So this is access to the core reading materials. It gives you also access to Slack. So we use Slack as a collaborative communication platform for all the attendees, as well as with the instructors and the mentors. You get your initial set of homework, initial set of pre-work, all of the related materials and videos. So it gives you an opportunity to get settled in. And then what we do is we walk through the agenda in each session. At the end of each session, there's the homework for the next day, and then we continue to work through it. Each day tends to be fairly workshop centric. There's a little bit of what I'll call lecture, for lack of a better term, usually no more than 45 minutes at a crack, and we tend to get into workshops. So yeah, good question. And I'm going to speak for Andy and say honestly that he just said he really recommends it. So it's great.
Any questions from online? I don't know if they can.
We have 5 viewers online, so I'm hopeful that they can hear everything and that they can ask. It's always a good test.
What was the most difficult part of customer validation? Oh, yeah. Let's get over that.
Maybe if online, if you guys can just see your chat, which should be a blue little box at the top.
Top left.
Top left.
Just make sure you click on the chat. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear it. Or you can turn on your audio and ask if your audio is not on.
No, I think of these, they can't.
Oh, they can't.
It's just a broadcast.
Oh, it's just a broadcast. Yeah.
We can just say goodbye.
What was the question, Jen?
What's the hardest thing about customer validation?
Customer discovery. Yeah.
Pick up the phone. It's like the first thing.
Picking up the phone the first time. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I was talking to an entrepreneur just this morning, and they had gone through a prior KickX cohort. And what they found is they were building the company based on the idea. And then now that they've had a few months of traction, now they've seen these trends in their user behavior, in their customer behavior. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, you know, I think there's a bigger opportunity there. Like it's as an extension, as an evolution of what they're doing. And so we had a good chat about it. And then I said, so you know what you need to do now, right? And the person was like, I gotta pick up the phone. And I said, yep, time to start to do that next evolution of customer discovery and find out if this new idea really is an evolution and really is something that people want. And so the person said, their exact words were like, thank God I went through it the first time with KickX, because it is the hardest thing to do. The biggest challenge that we face as entrepreneurs is when we choose to ask our friends and family about our idea. And the reason is friends and family are not, usually they're not our target audience. Like just from an age and a demographic perspective, they're probably not our audience to begin with. Second of all, they're completely biased. You know, it's very rare, you know, if I was Ilya's uncle, right? And Ilya would say, hey, Uncle Keith, like, what do you think of my idea? Like, dude, that sucks. What a terrible idea. Like, our families and friends don't usually do that. And so it's so important for us to talk to strangers who fit the demographic. And so when you do that, amazing things can happen. You know, there was a company, actually it was a nonprofit in the last cohort, and they were testing out an idea. And so without a word of a lie, they said, okay, they came, you know, they woke up on a Tuesday morning and they said, okay, I'm gonna start to make some calls for some potential customers to do customer discovery. So they were calling to ask for feedback on the idea. And literally 10 out of 10, they made sales. And they were like, I wasn't even trying to sell. I was just trying to get feedback on the idea, right? And so that was such a great validation point. And in other cases, as Jen and Andy have experienced, sometimes people are like, nah, you know, no, but maybe this, or I could really use help with that. And you get a chance to hear what people really need. So it's a great question.
And I'm still going through it. Like, we don't stop iterating. Even though we've had some traction, we still pick up the phone and call.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big part of the Kick program is to put tools in your hands that you will use on an ongoing basis. So what a lot of people don't know, for example, with Business Model Canvas, is you should be looking at it at least once a quarter, at least, and just say what's changed, right? What's evolved? Has the value proposition evolved? Have we identified new channels that we can take advantage of? Has the revenue model changed? Right? It's a great way for you to pause and take a step back and a step up and really see what's happening. One of the flaws, shouldn't say that. Business Model Canvas is a great tool, but every time you create something, it's like version 1.0, right? It's the first version. And so, you know, once people look at it, they're like, hey, what about that? Right? And so with Business Model Canvas, one of the things that's missing is competition. And so, especially in the last couple of cohorts that we've been working through, we've actually spent more time on competition because it tends to get overlooked when people are doing the regular Business Model Canvas. So, for what it's worth, yeah. Yeah, please.
And what happens when you're doing customer validation, but you're concerned about the IP of the idea? And like, how do you pose the question for people you're trying to validate without losing the value of the idea?
So good question. Yeah, so a couple things related to that. So first I'll answer your specific question and then I'll make more of a broad observation. So the question being, what happens if you have something that might have some intellectual property, trade secret, etc.? How do you share it? The important part about customer discovery is you don't talk about features and you don't talk about specific process. What you do is you actually talk about values. What are you looking for? Save time, reduce cost, save lives. So for example, I mentioned earlier an entrepreneur with a wearable device for women with high risk pregnancy. And so when he talked to those women, there's IP related to that idea. But what he was talking about is, you know, what are the issues that you face? What are your biggest concerns if you have a high risk pregnancy? And so it was, I'm worried about my baby's life. I'm worried about my own life. I'm worried about birth defects. So they talked more about values and benefits and pain and solution, as opposed to here are the nuances by which I go about to solve that problem. You see what I'm saying? So what you would say is, what if I could give you a solution that would be a wearable device plus an iPhone app that would actually alert you when your high risk pregnancy actually became critical? See, now I've not revealed anything, but I can get a reaction based on the value benefits, right? So it's important to note always that if it's in a consumer context, you describe it in value benefit. In a business to business sales context, you still describe it in value benefit, but usually what happens is if you move to a second conversation, you would pull out a non-disclosure agreement because you'll probably in a business to business context, talk through a few more details that second or third time around. So that's sort of direct answer to your question. The more macro observation that I'll make to people is the technology sector as a whole, if we think about IP as being technology centric, not always the case, but I'll use it as a broad brush, has moved dramatically in the last 6 years, 7 years. And it used to be that you almost could not call yourself a tech company unless you had IP. And now you've got a company like Hootsuite, which has 1,000 employees and is valued at north of $2 billion. And not only do they not have any IP, but they, you know, in company acquisitions, they won't even buy a company that has IP. And the reason is because there are now many sectors of what I'll call technology-enabled businesses, where it's about getting to market faster. It's about innovating quicker than the competition. Where IP is not a discernible competitive advantage. And so the most important part, or the most important question you have to ask yourself at that point in time is, do I really have anything secret? Do I really have anything that is so unique that no one else has it? And where is the true value of what I'm doing? There's a company in town called D-Wave. It's a quantum computing company. They have 100 patents granted, more than 250 still pending. That's an IP company for sure, right? Google with search algorithms, some of the crazy things they do with Google Maps, self-driving cars, Google Glass, lots of IP. but many other hugely successful companies, people like, you know, Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and Hootsuite locally, you know, there's no IP, right? So I think that that's an important part of that process, is just to know if you do truly or not. Yeah. It's one of the great parts about Kick, right? Because when you do customer discovery, often you're like, oh, I've got this great idea. No one else is doing it. This is going to be awesome. And then you're like, hey, Ilya, I think you're in my target audience. Can I ask you some questions? And he's like, yeah, actually, I've got this app. It already does that. And you're like, oh, you know. And so more often than not, there's already 12 people doing something like what you're thinking about doing. That's not a bad thing. It just means that there is a market, and so worth potentially exploring. You know, when Hootsuite launched, it was the 15th social media dashboard available, Twitter dashboard. Within 3 months, there was about 45. They weren't the first, and there was a crowded space. Still can win, right? And it's about knowing where the value really is, what the customer really needs. So few entrepreneurs ever focus on that, and that gives you a huge competitive advantage if you can, right? So.
Hang on to that a little bit. So I did a lot of B2B and B2C calls. For B2B, a lot of times you hear, we thought of that, or yeah, someone pitched us that, but, and then the goal really happens when the but happens, because you'll be able to find out a lot more. And you actually encounter a lot of companies that have actually thought about it, wanted to do it, but for some reason they didn't want to, because companies, they are all when think about great ideas. They don't do it for a certain reason. You know, I don't know those reasons. Exactly.
Yeah. Thanks, Eddie. It's good. Cool. Additional questions, comments? Do you guys have your own ideas? Are you thinking about exploring an idea? So we have one own idea.
Yeah, the three of us are working together right now.
Oh, the three of you.
Sorry,
Them three. Oh, okay, and you have your own idea. Great.
I think we can just sign off here. I don't think there's a way for them to ask questions.
Okay. So maybe what we're gonna do is, for the people who are virtual, definitely appreciate you taking the time to join us. If you have any follow-up questions, so first we're gonna share this broadcast, but if you have any questions, what we'll do is have you email them to Ilya. We will set up another session that will be fully interactive. This was our opportunity to test this platform, and so appreciate your patience in that. And what we'll do is we'll circle back and also provide some follow-up information. So thank you very much for your time.